I learned the sound a marriage makes when it finally stops pretending. It was 2:13 a.m. on the open deck of the Serenity Belle, a cruise ship dressed up like a floating chandelier. The ocean below was black glass, cracked only by our long white wake. Wind slipped under my collar and tasted like salt and metal. In my hand was a sweating rocks glass I hadn't ordered. Inside it, half submerged in melting ice, was my husband's wedding ring. Gold still shines in the dark. It catches the deck lights and throws them back like a warning. That ring winked at me with every sway of the ship, as if it knew what I was still trying not to name. 25 years, Denise, and you can still be surprised. I set the glass on the rail and stared until my eyes watered from the cold. The ring clinked softly against ice, polite, quiet, nothing like betrayal in the movies. No screaming, no shattered plates. Just a small sound on a ship in the middle of water, where there is nowhere to run. Behind me, the deck doors sighed open. Warm air leaked out with the smell of butter and perfume and somebody's cigar. Footsteps followed, confident, measured. I knew that rhythm the way you know a song you've heard for decades. "Denise," Rodney Carter said, trying to make my name sound gentle. I kept my eyes on the ocean. "You're awake." "Couldn't sleep." A pause, then a breathy laugh meant to sound casual. "That's my ring." I turned at my head. Rodney stood a few feet away, hands in the pockets of his dinner jacket, perfectly pressed even at this hour. Gray at the temples, posture upright, face calm in the way powerful men practice. The ship's light sharpened his cheekbones. His eyes stayed flat. "I know it's your ring," I said. His smile appeared fast, polished, practiced, useful. It didn't reach his eyes. "Well," he nodded at the glass. "That's dramatic." "Is it?" I asked. "Because I didn't put it in there." Rodney's shoulders lifted in a mild shrug. "Maybe you're imagining things." There it was, gaslighting in marriage, served in a soft sentence. Not fireworks, not cruelty you can photograph, just words that ask you to doubt your own senses. I watched him like a stranger wearing my husband's face. "You said you couldn't sleep," I said, "but you knew where to find me." "It's a ship," he replied. "There aren't many places." That was when I understood what this night was meant to be. Not an accident, a stage. Rodney had chosen this anniversary trip because it was beautiful and contained. On the ocean, you can't drive away. You can't call your sister to pick you up. You can't slam your front door and lock it behind you. You are trapped inside other people's schedules. Dinner times, show times, port days, polite smiles, and the constant expectation that you will behave. The perfect place for a cheating husband confession. My body recognized the pattern before my mind wanted to. For months, little things had been piling up. Missed calls that came with rehearsed explanations, receipts for restaurants I'd never been to, a new password on his phone for security, sudden trips that didn't match his calendar. When I asked, he'd tilt his head and smile that polished smile and say, "Baby, you're tired. You're reading into everything." He'd make it sound caring, like he was worried about my stress, while quietly teaching me to question my own memory. That's how it starts, not with proof, but with the slow erosion of your confidence. Even this cruise had been his idea, sold as romance. "Let's do something big," he'd said. "A real celebration. You deserve it." He picked the ship. He picked the cabin. He even insisted on inviting a few friends and business couples, so it feels like a party. At the time, I told myself he was generous. Now I understood it was strategy. If he controlled the setting, he controlled the story. If there were witnesses, he could shape what they believed. And if I reacted the way a betrayed wife is expected to, crying, shaking, begging, then I'd be the spectacle, not his choices. Tanya caught it first. She said the danger wasn't the affair, it was the theater. "He wants you shaky," she warned. "He wants you to look like the problem. Don't give him that." In front of strangers. And I was holding the prop. "You planned this," I said, so quietly the wind almost stole it. Rodney didn't deny it. "Let's go inside," he said. "You're cold." The way he said it, like a decision made for me, lit a hard little flame in my chest. Not rage, clarity. I followed him through the doors, past couples swaying to a late-night saxophone, past the piano bar where a man sang about forever like it was still safe to believe in forever. Rodney moved through the lounge collecting smiles as if they belonged to him. In the elevator, mirrored walls reflected us from every angle. My navy shawl, my neat bun, the diamond studs Rodney gave me for our 20th anniversary. An investment, he'd called them. His suit, his steady face, the space between us, sharp as a seam. The hallway to our cabin was quiet, carpet thick enough to swallow footsteps. Soft lighting made everything look calm. Even secrets. Rodney swiped the keycard and held the door with old-fashioned politeness. The click behind us sounded final. Our room smelled like hotel soap, clean and anonymous. The bed was turned down, towels folded into ridiculous swans, 2 chocolates placed like promises on the pillows. A bottle of champagne sat in a silver bucket with a card. Happy 25th anniversary, in cheerful gold letters. Rodney loosened his tie and set it on the dresser with slow care. Then he sat by the window and crossed his ankle over his knee, as if we were about to discuss a quarterly report. "I don't want to do this ugly," he said. "Ugly," I repeated. "We've had a good run," he continued, sighing like I was the difficult part. "I'm trying to be respectful." Respectful. A word men use when they want to leave without consequences. I didn't speak. Silence is a tool. People confess more when you don't interrupt them. Rodney studied my face, waiting for tears, for pleading, for the familiar rhythm where I asked what I did wrong, and he explained why my feelings were inconvenient. When I didn't give him that, his gaze sharpened. "I met someone," he said. "Someone who makes me feel alive." The line landed clean, rehearsed. The cheating husband confession, delivered like a speech practiced in a mirror. I thought about the man I married, the one who carried groceries up 3 flights in our first apartment, who kissed my forehead when our daughter was born and whispered, "We did it." Then I thought about the man he became, the one who checked his phone during my stories, who corrected my memories in front of people, who told me I was too sensitive. So many times I started hearing it in my own voice. "Is that why you took your ring off?" I asked. "It felt dishonest to wear it," he said, staring at the window. I let out a slow breath. "So you chose honesty tonight." "Don't do that," he warned. "Do what?" "Make me the villain." He leaned forward a little. "I'm not leaving you with nothing. I'm not that guy." I turned my head. "Rodney, you are exactly that guy." His eyes flashed, the mask slipping for a heartbeat. Then the smile returned, polished again. "You're going to be okay," he said, softer now. "You're strong. You always land on your feet." That sentence nearly made me laugh. Not because it was kind, but because it was an excuse. If I was strong, he didn't have to be decent. My phone vibrated. A text from Tanya Brooks lit the screen. "Don't react. Watch him. He's not confessing. He's performing." Tanya had been my friend since I was 19, back when my life fit in a dorm room, and my biggest problem was a chemistry final. She'd watched my marriage from the outside with the patience of someone who loved me too much to tell me what I wasn't ready to hear. Earlier that evening, she'd sat across from me at the captain's table, posture straight, lipstick the exact deep plum she wore when she meant business. The dining room glowed with candlelight and silver. A string quartet played something romantic. Waiters moved like shadows, refilling glasses before anyone asked. Rodney stood and tapped his knife against his flute. The room turned toward him like sunflowers. He had that effect. People liked being near him. It made them feel close to power. "Ladies and gentlemen," he'd said, smiling wide, "thank you for celebrating with us tonight." Cheers, applause, the clink of glasses. Then he looked at me and his smile sharpened. "This anniversary is a milestone," he continued. "Not everyone makes it this far." More laughter. People loved that line. "And sometimes," he said, voice dropping just enough to feel intimate, "milestones force you to be honest about what you really want." My stomach had dipped, slow and sick, the way it does when you miss a step in the dark. Under the table, Tanya touched my knee once. Light, grounding, a warning. Rodney lifted his glass. To new beginnings. Everyone cheered. Some people even stood. I sat perfectly still because I understood. He wasn't giving a toast. He was announcing a takeover. This wasn't just that my husband cheated and had an affair. This was a man trying to rewrite the story in public, so when I finally reacted, I would look unstable, emotional, unreasonable. He wanted witnesses. He wanted the room on his side. Back in the cabin, Rodney watched me, waiting for my reaction, like a man waiting for a predictable result. "So what happens now?" I asked. Relief softened his shoulders. He thought we were negotiating. "We enjoy the rest of the cruise," he said. "We keep it civil. When we get back, we handle things quietly. No drama. We're adults." "Adults," he said, like he hadn't put his ring in a glass, and followed me onto the deck at 2:13 a.m. "You want me to smile for 7 more days," I said. "It's for the best," he replied. "For everyone." Everyone. The invisible jury. I felt something settle inside me, heavy and calm. The story sharpened. The lines came into focus. This cruise ship betrayal story wasn't a tragedy. It was a controlled environment Rodney built so he could leave clean. Beautiful, enclosed, full of people who would clap on cue. He expected me to break. He underestimated how tired I was of breaking. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jamal Whitaker. "Everything's set. Call if he escalates. Remember, document, don't debate." Jamal, quiet, sharp, patient. The kind of lawyer who didn't waste words. The kind of man who understood that men like Rodney don't fear emotions. They fear records. Rodney didn't know Jamal was on this ship. He didn't know I'd prepared for an anniversary trip gone wrong. He didn't know I'd already moved money, already copied documents, already stopped believing his version of reality. He thought the ocean had trapped me. He didn't realize it had trapped him, too. Rodney stood and walked closer, lowering his voice like he was being reasonable. "Denise, don't make this harder than it has to be." "You already did," I said. His eyes searched my face for fear. When he didn't find it, the confident mask wavered. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I let the question hang long enough for him to feel the space where his control used to sit. Then I said, "I'm going to listen." He blinked. "Listen?" "Yes," I said. "I'm going to watch you. I'm going to let you keep talking. Because the more you talk, Rodney, the more you tell on yourself." For the first time that night, his smile didn't come back right away. I picked up the rocks glass again and held it between us so the ring caught the light. "Put it back on," I said quietly. "If you're going to perform, at least wear the costume." Rodney stared at the ring, then at me, and I saw it, the smallest flicker of unease. Not guilt, not remorse. Just the fear of a man realizing the audience might not clap the way he planned. And if you think that's where it ends, if you think this is just a story where a woman cries in her cabin and a man walks away clean, don't go anywhere. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and your local time. Hit like if you've ever been underestimated. Subscribe, because the ocean keeps receipts, and the truth always surfaces. If you've ever tried to explain a slow betrayal to someone who's never lived inside it, you know the look they give you. The polite tilt of the head. The question that sounds harmless but lands like a slap. But did he actually do anything? Because the truth is, most affairs don't begin with lipstick on a collar. They begin with a shift in temperature. A room that used to feel warm goes cool, and you can't point to the exact moment the heat left. You just wake up one day and realize you're living next to a stranger who knows your habits better than your heart. I met Rodney Carter when I was 26 and still believed love was something you could build with 2 willing hands. We were at a friend's cookout in Prince George's County, the kind where the music is too loud, the plates are too full, and everyone calls you sis, even if you've never met. Rodney was leaner then, hairline sharp, laugh easy. He stood at the edge of the yard, watching people like he was studying them, then stepped in at the perfect moment with the perfect joke. That was his gift, timing. He asked for my number like it was a formality. "I'd hate to let tonight end without making sure I see you again," he said. Smooth, confident. The kind of line that should have annoyed me, but didn't, because his eyes held mine like he was telling the truth. For the first 2 years, Rodney was attentive in a way that felt like devotion. He remembered my favorite tea. He warmed my car in winter. He called my mother Ms. Denise, even after she told him to stop. When we married, he cried during the vows. Real tears, not performance. Or maybe I just didn't know the difference yet. We built a life in stages. First an apartment, then a small townhouse. Then our daughter, Brianna, whose first laugh cracked something open in me that I'd never close again. Rodney worked in sales at the time, ambitious but not yet powerful. We were partners back then. If he stayed late, he called. If I worried, he reassured me, without making me feel foolish. That version of Rodney existed. I won't pretend it didn't, because that's how people like him survive, by giving you a memory you can't stop defending. The shift started after his promotion, the one that moved him into executive territory and rewired his sense of gravity. More dinners, more travel, more networking, new suits, new friends with new laughs. He began using words like optics and brand in casual conversation, like our marriage was a public image he managed. The first time I felt it, really felt it, was a Tuesday night in our kitchen. Brianna was in middle school then, headphones on, the sound of her world humming through the walls. Rodney came in late, smelling like someone else's cologne layered over his own. I asked lightly, "Long day?" He didn't answer right away. He stared at me as if he'd forgotten I existed, then said, "You always interrogate me the second I walk in." Interrogate. I'd asked a question the way wives do when they still care. I apologized, because that's what you do when you're trying to keep peace. He kissed my cheek, quick and perfunctory, and walked upstairs. The air stayed cold behind him. After that, the gaslighting in marriage came in small doses. If I asked why he didn't call, he said I was controlling. If I noticed a charge on the card, he said I didn't understand business. If I mentioned feeling lonely, he said I was being dramatic. Sometimes he'd laugh, soft and affectionate, like he was calming a child. "Baby, you're tired," he'd say. "You're reading into things." At first, I believed him. That's the ugly part. I believed the man I married over the voice in my own chest. Then, the signs your husband is cheating after decades started showing up like bruises you notice in the mirror. A hotel receipt slipped from his briefcase. He said it was for a client. A woman's name flashed on his phone, Sierra, then disappeared when I leaned closer. He said it was a coworker. His screen changed to private mode. He began taking calls outside, standing on the porch with his back turned like the cold couldn't touch him. One night, at 1:47 a.m., I woke and found him in the living room, phone pressed to his ear, whispering. When I stepped into the hallway, the whisper stopped. He looked up, eyes irritated, then smiled like he'd been caught stealing candy. "Go back to bed," he said. "You scare easy." That sentence stuck to me, not because it was cruel, but because it was familiar. Rodney was teaching me how to be small. He didn't need to hit me. He just needed to make me doubt myself. I didn't tell anyone at first. I was raised to handle my home. Keep your business inside your walls. Protect your marriage. Protect your man. And after 20 years, you don't want to be the woman who says, out loud, "My husband cheated and had an affair." Because that sentence makes people look at you like you missed something obvious. Tanya Brooks did not let me hide for long. Tanya is the kind of friend who loves you like a sister and corrects you like a judge. She'd known me since we were broke and loud and convinced our lives would be huge. She became a nurse. I became an operations manager. We grew older in parallel, building our own forms of strength. She noticed Rodney's changes before I admitted them. At a family barbecue, while Rodney worked the crowd with his executive smile, Tanya watched him the way you watch a dog that's too quiet. Later, when we were alone washing dishes, she said, "He's performing." I laughed because it felt safer. He's just stressed. Tanya's eyes stayed steady. No, Denise, he's practicing. A month later, she came over unannounced with a bottle of wine and a bluntness I still thank God for. She sat at my kitchen table and said, "Tell me the truth. Is he cheating?" I stared at my hands. The word lodged in my throat like a bone. Then I nodded once, tiny. Tanya didn't gasp. She didn't ask for details first. She said, "Okay, now we move smart." That's how Jamal Whitaker entered my life. Jamal was a family acquaintance turned attorney with the kind of reputation built on quiet victories. He wasn't flashy. He didn't advertise. He had a calm face that made liars nervous. Tanya knew him through her cousin's messy divorce and called him the man who doesn't blink. When I met him, he didn't ask why I stayed so long. He didn't lecture me about therapy or self-respect. He asked practical questions. Do you have access to all accounts? Do you share debt? Does he have a separate line of credit? Any business entities? He spoke like a surgeon prepping for a procedure, not a preacher judging a sin. I told him what I had: hunches, late-night calls, a name, Sierra, and a growing fear that Rodney wasn't just cheating, he was planning. Jamal listened, then said something that changed everything. "Men like your husband don't leave on impulse," he said. "They leave on advantage." He explained it in plain terms. Rodney would try to control the narrative, control finances, control timing. If he could humiliate me publicly, he'd paint me as unstable. If he could isolate me, he'd negotiate from a position of strength. Jamal didn't use the word narcissist. He didn't need to. He described a pattern I already knew in my bones. "Your job," he said, "is not to prove your pain. Your job is to gather proof." So we did. Quietly. I started taking pictures of statements. I copied tax returns. I forwarded emails to a private account Rodney didn't know existed. I kept a notebook in a shoebox in my closet and wrote down dates and times like I was building a case file on my own life. Tanya helped me stay steady. "Observe. Don't explode," she'd say. "Document. Don't debate." The first time I caught a real slip, it was over something stupid. A spa charge. A couples massage on a night he told me he was in Chicago. The receipt had two names, Rodney Carter and Sierra Lane. The spelling was correct. The date was cleared. My hands didn't shake. My blood went quiet, like my body had decided fear was wasted energy. I sent the receipt to Jamal. He replied 2 minutes later. "Good. Now we wait." Waiting is harder than rage. Rage feels like power. Waiting feels like swallowing glass. Rodney kept living as if nothing was wrong. He still kissed me in public, still held my waist at parties, still called me baby in a tone that sounded affectionate to outsiders. That's the part people don't understand. The performance isn't for the world. It's for you. It's meant to keep you confused enough to stay. Then came the anniversary. Rodney announced the cruise at dinner like he was giving me a gift. 25 years, he said, raising his glass. "We should celebrate big." He booked the Serenity Belle, the kind of ship with tuxedo nights and marble staircases and photographers stationed like paparazzi. He insisted we invite a few couples from his professional circle. "It'll be fun," he said. "A party at sea." Tanya called me the next morning. "He picked a cruise because you can't leave," she said. "That's not romance, that's containment." Jamal agreed. "He's staging something," he said. But staging cuts both ways. Ships have cameras, staff are witnesses, transactions leave trails. So we built a plan around that fact. I told Rodney I was excited. I smiled in photos. I packed the dress he liked, the one that made me look like the version of myself he preferred. Polished, obedient, quiet. Inside, I was counting steps. On embarkation day, Rodney held my hand for the cameras, squeezed a little too tight, and whispered, "Let's have a perfect trip." I looked up at him and smiled back. "Oh," I said, sweet as sugar. "We will!" Because by then, I already knew. This was an anniversary trip gone wrong by design. A cruise ship betrayal story waiting for its cue. And somewhere on this ship, Sierra Lane was closer than Rodney wanted me to believe. The ocean doesn't care about your lies. It just keeps you surrounded while the truth rises. And when the ship's lights dim and the hallway goes quiet, you start hearing what your life has been trying to tell you for years. By the third day at sea, the Serenity Belle had taught me something basic about captivity. It doesn't need bars. It only needs polite schedules. Breakfast ended at 10. Lunch started at noon. Shows began at 8. Port excursions left with whistles and clipboards. Even the air felt managed. Cold in the casino, warm in the lounges, perfumed in the corridors where staff smiled like they were paid to forget your face. Rodney loved it. He moved through the ship like a man returning to a kingdom he believed he deserved. He shook hands with strangers, called them by their first names after hearing them once, and laughed at jokes before they were finished. He knew exactly where to stand, so the light hit his jaw right. He knew exactly how long to hold eye contact so people felt chosen. And he knew exactly how to keep me close without ever making it look like control. One hand at the small of my back, a gentle steering pressure like we were dancing. "Come meet the Daniels," he'd say. "Come take a picture. Come sit here. Come, come, come." The ship rocked softly under my feet, but I felt steadier than I had in months. Not because I trusted him, because I had stopped needing to. Tanya met me outside the coffee bar that morning, sunglasses on indoors the way she always wore them when she wanted privacy. She handed me a paper cup and didn't ask if I slept. "You're doing good," she said. "I'm doing quiet," I corrected. "Same thing," she murmured. "Any new tells?" I watched Rodney across the atrium. He stood near the staircase, talking to a couple from his office, smiling like his teeth had never clenched in anger. His phone was in his hand, not hidden, but angled so only he could see it. Every few seconds, his thumb flicked down, then paused, then flicked again. "He checks it like it's a pulse," I said, "like he's waiting on something." Tanya's mouth tightened. "Or someone." I didn't answer. We both had the same name in our heads. Sierra. The first time I saw her, I didn't even know it was her. That's the part I hate admitting. I'd expected a silhouette in a red dress, something obvious and cinematic, the kind of woman you'd point at and say, "There, her." Instead, she was plausible. She stood at the juice station on the Lido deck, wearing workout leggings and a white hoodie, hair pulled back, face bare. She looked like a woman on vacation, not a secret. She had a soft laugh and an easy way of touching the bartender's arm when she spoke, like she expected kindness to be returned. Rodney was not with her. He was 2 decks below, in the conference lounge, giving a casual networking talk to his colleagues. That was his story anyway, but when Sierra turned her head, her eyes passed over me and didn't pause. That bothered me more than anything. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look curious. She looked acquainted with the idea of me, like I was a photo she'd seen in a frame and already dismissed. Then her phone lit up. A message preview flashed for 1 second. I saw a single word: tonight. Her lips curved slightly. She typed back fast, then slipped the phone into her pocket. My stomach didn't drop. It went still. Like my body had decided this wasn't shock anymore. This was confirmation. I walked away without staring. I didn't need to. My eyes had already taken what they came for. I texted Jamal from the hallway outside the elevators. "Saw her. Confirmed. She's here." He replied almost immediately. "Copy. Stay calm. Don't confront. We're collecting, like we were building a museum of my husband's lies." That afternoon, Rodney insisted we take pictures on the bow. The ship's photographer lined us up beneath a gold arch that said, "Love sets sail." Rodney wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me in. "Smile," he whispered. I smiled. The camera clicked. Rodney's phone buzzed against my hip. I felt it before he did. His arm tightened a fraction. He glanced down. His smile didn't change, but his eyes did. A tiny shift, like a curtain moving. He slipped the phone out with his free hand, angled it away, glanced, then tucked it back as if nothing happened. The photographer said, "Beautiful! One more!" Rodney kissed my cheek for the photo. His lips were cool. "Perfect," he said, and I couldn't tell if he meant the picture or the plan in his head. That night, after dinner, he told me he needed to check something with one of the couples traveling with us. He said it like it was a favor, like he was doing business even on vacation. "I'll be back in an hour," he promised. I nodded. "Take your time." He didn't notice the way Tanya's hand tightened around her wine glass when he walked away. We waited 10 minutes. Then Tanya leaned toward me, voice low. "Want to take a walk?" I understood her language. Tanya didn't ask questions. She offered exits. We moved through the ship's corridors like two women looking for the bathroom. No urgency, no obvious mission. Just calm steps on patterned carpet. The Serenity Belle's interior was built to confuse you on purpose. Mirrors and curved hallways and identical doors. A floating maze designed to keep you spending money because you couldn't find your way back. I let myself get slightly lost. Then I found the service hallway Jamal had mentioned. Staff only, cleaner smell, brighter lights, security cameras in corners, blinking red. I paused just long enough to read a sign. Deck 8 Suites. Tanya's gaze met mine. "This is where he's staying," she whispered. "I know where he sleeps," I said. "No," Tanya replied. "This is where he disappears." We waited near a linen cart while a crew member pushed past us with towels. When the hallway cleared, Tanya nodded toward the end, where a door was propped open with a wedge. I saw a glimpse of the crew staircase. "Cameras," Tanya murmured. "Let them watch," I said. We slipped down one flight, then another, moving like we belonged. People don't question you if you walk like you have a purpose. That's a lesson women learn young. At Deck 6, the air changed. Cooler, quieter, fewer guests. The doors looked more private. We stepped out near a row of cabins. The numbers on the wall were close to ours. Our cabin was 6182. I counted forward. 6184, 6186, 61888. I stopped. A cabin door 2 doors down had a small paper tag tucked under the handle. Room service receipt, folded. Tanya raised her eyebrows. "People still do that?" "People who think no one is watching," I said. I didn't touch it. I leaned close enough to read the top line. Cabin 6190, 2 dinners, 2 steaks, 2 glasses of red wine. Timestamp, 10:42 p.m. The night Rodney told me he fell asleep early. My pulse stayed steady. I felt something else instead, an almost clinical focus. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the receipt without touching it. The camera shutter sound was off. Silent. Like I'd trained for this. Tanya exhaled slowly. "Denise." "I'm fine," I said, and realized I meant it. We're not guessing anymore. The hallway behind us filled with voices. We stepped away casually, pretending to admire a framed painting of a ship in calm waters. 2 men in polos walked past, laughing. A woman in a sequined dress wobbled in heels, her husband steadying her. Nobody looked at us twice. That's what betrayal looks like most of the time. You doing your best not to make a scene while everyone else keeps living. We returned to the public decks and found Rodney in the casino, leaning over a blackjack table, laughing too loud. A drink in his hand, his tie loosened, his eyes bright. He saw me and opened his arms as if I'd been the one gone too long. "There you are," he said. "I was looking for you." A lie delivered with warmth. I walked into his embrace and let his cologne coat my lungs. Under his arm, his phone buzzed again. I felt it. He pulled back, kissed my forehead, then said to the table, "My wife. 25 years and still the prettiest woman on this ship." People smiled. A woman said, "Oh." I smiled too, and in my head, I labeled it witness. Later, when Rodney fell asleep with the television on low, I sat in the bathroom with the fan running and called Jamal. He answered on the first ring. "Talk." I told him about cabin 6190 and the receipt and Sierra on the Lido deck. Jamal listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Good work. Now here's what we do." His plan was simple and brutal in its calm. We didn't need to expose him yet. Not until we controlled the timing. Not until the evidence was stacked high enough that denial would feel ridiculous. Not until Rodney believed he was safe. "Tomorrow is formal night," Jamal reminded me. "Captain's dinner, toasts, photos. He will want an audience." I swallowed. "He already started." "He'll push harder," Jamal said. "He wants to frame this as his brave truth, his midlife awakening. He'll make you look cold if you don't cry. He'll make you look crazy if you do. So you do neither. What do I do? You document. You let him talk. And when the time comes, we cut his access." I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The overhead light made my face look older, sharper. My eyes looked awake in a way they hadn't for years. "Cut his access how?" I asked. Jamal's voice stayed level. "Freeze bank accounts. Lock down the credit lines. Suspend the joint cards. You've already moved what you needed. I've got the paperwork ready for when we dock. But on that ship, the moment you remove his money, you remove his confidence." The words landed heavy and satisfying. Rodney loved control. Money was his favorite lever. If you take that lever away in public, you don't just inconvenience him, you expose him. "And what about Sierra?" I asked. Jamal paused. "Sierra's a variable. But if she's on this ship, she's not here for secrecy. She's here for placement." Placement. The word made my skin prickle, as if Sierra were being staged like a flower arrangement. Tanya knocked softly on the bathroom door. "You okay?" I ended the call and opened the door. Tanya took one look at my face and nodded. "Tomorrow," she said quietly. "Right?" "Tomorrow," I replied. That night, sleep came in thin slices. I'd drift off, then wake to Rodney's breathing, steady and entitled. In the dark, I watched the outline of his hand resting on the sheet, ringless, fingers relaxed like he had nothing to lose. Somewhere across the ship, Sierra Lane was breathing too. Maybe in cabin 6190, maybe in another cabin Rodney paid for, maybe in the same bed he'd promised was only mine. The ocean outside our balcony made a constant hush sound, like it was trying to keep everyone's secrets. The next day was a port day, and the ship pretended it was freedom. We docked just after dawn. The loudspeaker chimed with cheerful announcements about markets and snorkeling. People poured off the gangway in sun hats, eager to collect souvenirs and photos that would prove they'd been somewhere else. Rodney insisted we go ashore with the group. "Let's not waste the day," he said, meaning, let's make sure everyone sees us. On land, the air was wet and sweet. Fruit stands lined the pier, music pulsed from a bar, and vendors called out prices with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Rodney held my hand like an accessory. He guided me to photo spots, tilted my chin toward the light, and laughed loudly enough for strangers to look. We drifted into a crowded market. The aisles were narrow, bodies brushing past, the kind of place where you could lose someone and call it an accident. Rodney stepped into a jewelry stall to look at bracelets. I stood outside, pretending to admire carved wooden masks. Tanya stood beside me, arms crossed. Through hanging beads, I saw Rodney speak to a woman in a yellow sundress, Sierra Lane. She leaned toward him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Then Rodney noticed me through the beads, and his face tightened. Sierra turned too, and smiled. Not friendly, possessive, like I was an inconvenience she'd already priced in. Rodney stepped out fast and took my elbow. "Let's keep moving," he said, voice bright. He steered us away from the pier, deeper into the market, toward an alley where the crowd thinned and the music faded. "You know," he said softly, "I've been thinking about our future. I want us to handle this like adults. No scenes." Scenes, always scenes. Rodney was obsessed with optics. He wanted my silence more than he wanted my forgiveness. His phone buzzed. He glanced down, annoyance flashing, then pleasure. "I'm going to grab something from the ship," he said. "You two keep shopping." He vanished into the crowd like he'd practiced disappearing. The moment he was gone, Tanya exhaled. "He brought her here so you'd see her," she whispered. He wants you to snap. And I won't, I said. My voice sounded calm, but my skin felt too tight. We walked back toward the pier, staying centered in the crowd. Halfway there, my instincts flared. Someone behind us, matching our pace. Not close enough to touch, close enough to be felt. In the reflection of a glass display, I caught the face for a second. A crew member in ship uniform beneath a light jacket. His gaze stayed on us, blank and professional. Tanya didn't turn. "Could be security," she murmured. "Could be Rodney's eyes." When we reached the gangway, the crew member slowed and let us board first, watching until we disappeared into the ship's cold, recycled air. Back in our cabin, I locked the balcony door. "I feel watched," I told Tanya. She nodded like she'd expected that answer. I called Jamal. When I told him about Sierra in the market and the crew member trailing us, his voice hardened. "Do not drink anything Rodney hands you," he said. "No open glasses. If you leave a drink unattended, you don't touch it again." My mind flashed to that faint shimmer in my champagne on the first night, the glint I'd tried to blame on light. Now it felt like a warning I'd been too polite to hear. That evening, Rodney suggested drinks before dinner. He ordered champagne for all of us. The waiter set 3 flutes down. Rodney reached for mine first. Tanya's hand moved, smooth and fast. She slid her flute into my hand and took the one Rodney offered me, as if it was nothing. Rodney didn't notice. He lifted his own glass. "To us!" Tanya took a small sip, eyes on him over the rim. Then she set it down and smiled. "Bubbly," she said. Rodney's gaze flicked to her glass. One quick, disappointed microsecond. Then the mask returned. Later, in the bathroom with the faucet running, Tanya whispered, "He wanted you to drink first." I nodded, throat tight. We poured the remaining champagne down the sink. It foamed and vanished like a confession. From that moment on, I stopped thinking of Rodney as a man having an affair. I started thinking of him as a man building a trap, and traps are always designed to look like gifts. The next morning at sea, Rodney acted like nothing had happened. That normalcy was its own kind of threat. He suggested a private breakfast on the balcony. "Just us," he said, smiling. "No Tanya, no work people. We need space." I agreed, then texted Tanya to meet me 10 minutes later in the hallway. If Rodney wanted privacy, he could have it, just not unsupervised. Breakfast arrived on a tray, covered plates, fresh fruit, coffee, 2 champagne flutes for the celebration. Rodney's hand hovered near the flutes the way it had the night before. I didn't touch them. I poured myself coffee from the sealed pot and kept the lid in place. Rodney watched me over his cup. "You've been tense," he said gently. "I miss when you trusted me." I held his gaze. "I trust patterns," I replied. His smile froze for half a beat. Then he leaned back and laughed like I'd told a joke. "You always did love your little theories." Little, that word again, his favorite way to shrink me. After he left for his workout, I noticed something on the carpet near the desk. A second keycard, half hidden under a brochure. Not ours. Different design. I picked it up with a tissue and slipped it into a zip bag Tanya had given me, the kind nurses use for specimen samples. At the bottom corner, tiny print, 6190. My pulse stayed steady, but my skin went cold. Rodney hadn't just visited that cabin. He had access. At guest services, I asked a simple question with a steady voice. "If a guest reports feeling unsafe, what's the protocol?" The attendant's smile tightened. She lowered her voice and gave me a card for ship security. "We take that seriously," she said, suddenly formal. I tucked the card into my clutch like a weapon. When I turned, Sierra was standing near the photo kiosk, pretending to scroll through souvenirs on a screen. She looked up, and our eyes met. Up close, her smile was sharper. "You're doing a lot of walking," she said softly, as if we were old friends. "I like to know where I am," I replied. Sierra's gaze flicked to my clutch. "Good," she said. "You'll want to remember this trip." Then she walked away, hips calm, shoulders loose, like she'd already rehearsed the ending. That afternoon, As I passed the quiet corridor by the private events door again, I heard Rodney's voice inside. Low, irritated. A woman's laugh answered, muffled. Sierra's. Then Rodney said, clear as a knife through cloth, after the captain's dinner, don't be late. A pause. Sierra replied, sweet and certain. I won't be. Bring the card. I liked the sweet. My hand tightened around the railing. He wasn't planning a goodbye. He was planning a handoff. And he wanted witnesses for it. Formal night arrived with the kind of glamour that makes you forget you're still human. The ship glowed. Staff wore crisp uniforms. Guests dressed like they were auditioning for a lifestyle. Cameras flashed. Laughter bounced off marble. Rodney put on his tuxedo like armor. He stood in front of the mirror, DHC, adjusting his cufflinks, studying his own face with quiet satisfaction. Then he looked at me in my black dress and said, You look beautiful. It sounded like a compliment. It felt like an evaluation. Tanya knocked at our door. She wore a deep green gown that made her look like a judge at a gala. Ready? She asked. Rodney grinned. Always. Captain's dinner was held in a private room with panoramic windows. The ocean outside looked like ink. Inside, everything was white and gold and soft music. The table was set with heavy silverware, crystal glasses, folded napkins like swans. Rodney chose the seat at the head. Of course he did. He placed me to his right. Tanya sat across, and two other couples from Rodney's circle filled the remaining seats. People I'd smiled at for years at corporate events. People who'd sent Christmas cards with staged family photos. People who believed Rodney was a great man because he paid for expensive appetizers. A server poured champagne. Rodney watched the flute fill with bubbles, then glanced at me. Cheers, he said, lifting his glass. I lifted mine. The crystal felt cold against my fingers. The bubbles rose fast, eager. I remembered the rock's glass on the deck, his ring winking in ice. 25 years, someone said. That's rare, Rodney chuckled. It takes work. I held my smile. Work? Yes, mine. The first course arrived. The room settled into polite conversation. Rodney told stories about business wins, about travel, about how lucky he was to have such support at home. He used the word support like it was my job title. Every time he spoke, I watched his phone. It lay beside his plate, face down. He touched it too often, fingers tapping like a heartbeat. A few times it buzzed. He didn't pick it up. He simply let it buzz, then stopped it with a palm, like he was holding back something eager to break free. The second course came. A woman across from me complimented my dress. I thanked her. Rodney squeezed my knee under the table, a little too hard. He leaned toward the group and said, I have something I want to share tonight. Tanya's eyes flicked to mine. There it was, the cue. The room hushed the way rooms do when men announce important things. Rodney stood, glass in hand. The window behind him framed the ocean like a backdrop. His tuxedo made him look like a politician. His smile looked charitable. Friends, he began, thank you for joining us. This trip, this anniversary, it's made me think. I kept my face calm. Inside, my mind narrowed into a tunnel. Watch, record, let him talk. Rodney continued, voice warm. Life is short, and I've realized that honesty is the greatest gift we can give the people we love. The words sounded noble. That's how he did it. He wrapped selfishness in virtue until you almost clapped. He looked at me. Denise and I, we've built something. A family. A life. And I'll always respect her for that. Respect. Not love. Not devotion. Respect. Like I was a colleague he was letting go. My fingers tightened around my napkin. I didn't move. Rodney took a breath. But I've also realized that sometimes people grow apart. A woman at the table frowned slightly. A man shifted uncomfortably. Tanya's posture stayed tall, still. Rodney's eyes shone with practiced emotion. And sometimes, you meet someone who reminds you what it feels like to be seen. There it was. the confession wrapped in poetry. The room went silent. The only sound was the soft clink of crystal in Rodney's hand and the ocean's distant hush. He smiled, and for a second, I saw the man on the deck at 2:13 a.m., the ring in the ice, the calm cruelty. "I didn't plan for this," Rodney said, "but it's real, and I can't keep pretending." Across the table, Tanya lifted her glass slightly, as if toasting my restraint. I set my champagne down, slowly, carefully, a quiet act that felt like the first domino. Rodney's eyes narrowed. He expected tears, or fury, or at least a tremble. Instead, I spoke, soft enough to make everyone lean in. "Rodney," I said. He paused. "Yes? I want you to check your phone." The room blinked, confused. Rodney's smile twitched. "Now?" "Yes," I repeated, tone even. "Check it." For half a second, he didn't move. Then he forced a laugh. "Denise, not us?" "Check," I said again, and my voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Calm can be louder than shouting. Rodney's jaw tightened. He picked up his phone and flipped it over. The screen lit. A notification stacked on top of another. Declined, declined, declined. His face changed, fast. The warm mask cracked. A flash of panic skittered across his eyes, then was gone, replaced by a stiff smile. He tapped, scrolling. His fingers moved too quickly. He swallowed once. "What is this?" he hissed low. I watched him like I'd been watching him for months. "Actions tell the truth," I said softly, for the table. Rodney's voice sharpened. "Denise!" Tanya's gaze stayed steady on him, like a spotlight. A server arrived with the main course, steaks, pausing when she sensed the tension. Rodney waved her away too quickly. "Sir?" she asked politely. Rodney didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on his phone. "It's fine." The server hesitated, then stepped back. Across the table, one of Rodney's colleagues cleared his throat. "Rodney? Everything okay?" Rodney looked up, smile pasted back on. "Of course," he said. "Just a technical issue." I leaned back slightly in my chair, letting my calm fill the room like perfume. Rodney's phone buzzed again. He stared at it. His thumb hovered, then stopped. Because the next notification wasn't from a bank. It was a message. Access revoked. Rodney's face went pale under the chandelier light, and the ocean behind him remained black and endless, like it had been waiting for this moment too. People think power is loud. Real power is a room going quiet while one man realizes his leverage is gone. Rodney Carter stared at his phone. Access revoked sat on the screen like a verdict. For a beat, the private dining room stayed pretty. Chandeliers, crystal, the ocean behind glass. Then Rodney's breathing changed. One shallow pause, a calculation failing. He set the phone down too carefully, like the table might bite. "Technical issue," he said again, voice thin. "It'll sort itself out." Across from him, Greg Daniels and his wife exchanged the kind of look married couples share when they want to leave but don't want to be rude. Tanya watched Rodney the way a nurse watches a monitor, quiet, ready. I folded my napkin once, slow. My hands didn't shake. Rodney tried to slide back into his rehearsed confession. "As I was saying, life is—" His phone buzzed again. The vibration sounded louder than it should have in that silence. Rodney's fingers twitched toward it. Then he looked at me instead, eyes narrowing. As if the answer might be written on my face. I gave him calm. A server hovered with the entree tray, caught between professionalism and curiosity. "Sir," she asked gently, "shall I serve?" "Yes," Rodney snapped, then softened too late. "Please. Sorry." Plates landed. Steak aroma rose warm and normal, rude in its timing. Rodney picked up his knife, tried to cut, and the blade trembled once. He stilled it with a tighter grip. He leaned toward me, voice low enough to sound intimate to anyone watching. "What did you do?" "I protected myself," I said. His eyes flashed. "This is not the time." It's exactly the time, I replied, still soft. Greg cleared his throat with a nervous laugh. Rodney, what's going on? Rodney lifted his head, smile pasted on. Nothing. A banking glitch. Tanya took a slow sip of wine. Banking glitches don't usually say access revoked, she murmured. Silence thickened. Middle-aged people don't like scenes, but they hate being lied to in their own presence even more. I let my gaze travel the table, collecting witnesses. I didn't bring this to your dinner, I said evenly. He did. Rodney's mouth tightened. You're humiliating me. You humiliated me for months, I said, quietly. Then you called it imagination. The room absorbed that. Gaslighting doesn't sound dramatic when you name it without the label. It sounds like a fact. Rodney pushed his chair back a fraction. We can talk privately. We already did, I said. Every time you told me I was overthinking. Every time you disappeared and came back smelling like someone else. His jaw flexed. Then the door opened. Sierra Lane stepped into the room like she'd been invited to the head table. She wore dark champagne silk, hair glossy, lipstick precise. Not a woman hiding, a woman arriving. Rodney froze. The table's eyes shifted, helplessly pulled toward the new figure in the doorway. Sierra smiled lightly. Oh, she said sweetly. I didn't realize the toast had started. Rodney rose too fast. Sierra, he hissed. Not now. Sierra's gaze slid over the table, then landed on me with calm possession. Denise, she said, polite as a cashier. You're handling this well. It was a jab disguised as admiration, the kind meant to provoke. Thank you, I replied, and my calm made her blink. Greg's wife whispered, Rodney, who is that? Rodney grabbed his phone again as it buzzed. He scanned the screen, color draining from his face in slow waves. He looked at me, voice dropping. You froze my accounts. I secured the joint accounts, I corrected. The joint cards, the lines tied to my name, the ones you treated like yours. Rodney's eyes sharpened with anger. You can't do that. I can, I said. Because I prepared. Tanya's voice cut in, calm and surgical. Because your wife finally stopped protecting your lies. Sierra's smile faltered. Rodney, she said quietly. What is she talking about? Rodney didn't answer her. He straightened, reorganizing himself. The predator finding his mask. He turned back to the table with a charming smile. Friends, I apologize. Denise is emotional. Anniversaries bring up complicated feelings. Emotional. His oldest escape hatch. I reached into my clutch and slid a small envelope to the center of the table like a playing card. What's that? Greg asked. It's a copy, I said, of the keycard I found in our cabin. Cabin 6190. Sierra's chin lifted, then stiffened. And a photo, I continued, of the room service receipt under that door. 2 steaks, 2 wines, time-stamped. Rodney's smile held, but his eyes flicked to Sierra like a warning. Circumstantial, he said quickly. Tanya leaned forward. So is calling her by name like she belongs here, she said. Sierra's voice turned small and sharp. You told me I wouldn't have to leave anymore. That sentence did more damage than any shout. It wasn't confession. It was expectation. Greg's wife set her napkin down slowly. Rodney? She asked, careful. Are you having an affair? Rodney's mouth opened, then closed. Reputation weighed heavier than truth in his throat. It's not what it looks like, he managed. I tilted my head. Then what does it look like? Auk silence. Rodney's eyes darted toward the doorway, measuring distance. He wanted an exit. He wanted a reset. He wanted his private story back. 2 ship's security officers appeared at the door, professional and calm. Conflict had crossed the ship's invisible threshold. Is everything all right here? One officer asked. Rodney brightened, relieved. Authority arriving, someone he could charm. Yes, he said quickly. Just a private disagreement. I lifted my hand slightly. "I'd like to speak with security," I said. "Privately." "About a safety concern." The officer's gaze shifted to me with respect. "Of course, ma'am." Rodney's eyes snapped to mine. "Denise, not without witnesses," I said. Security guided me into the corridor. Tanya followed, shoulder close to mine. Behind us, the dining room stayed silent, a room full of people suddenly aware they'd been watching a performance. In a small security office, I spoke in facts, not feelings. The faint shimmer in my champagne, the swapped glasses, the crew member who seemed to trail us at port, the message patterns, the keycard. I asked for my key access to be changed, and for Rodney's access to be limited pending review. The officer nodded, taking notes. "We can change access immediately," he said, "and review footage." "Are you in immediate danger?" I chose honesty. "I don't know what he's capable of," I said, "but I know he's escalating." A new keycard slid across the desk. Simple plastic. A small border drawn in the right place. On the walk back, my phone buzzed. "Jamal. You okay?" I typed. "Security involved. Access changed." His reply. "Good. He'll try another angle. Stay calm. Keep recording." In the elevator back toward the stateroom level, the ship's music floated in. An old soul song piped through hidden speakers, upbeat enough to insult me. Tanya watched the floor numbers light. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "I'm doing the necessary thing," I answered. He's always been good at making necessary look like dramatic. When we reached the corridor, I asked the officer one question. "If he tries to enter my cabin?" "He'll be denied," the officer said. "If he pushes, call us immediately." That was a new feeling, being believed on the first try. Inside the cabin, I pulled my hidden folder from the suitcase. Printed bank statements, screenshots of late-night transfers, the photo of the second keycard, and the text thread Jamal helped me retrieve from the cloud backup when Rodney forgot to disable it. Tanya skimmed the pages, then shook her head slowly. "He really thought you wouldn't look," she said. "He thought I'd rather keep peace than keep facts," I replied. I called the attorney Tanya had recommended weeks ago, but I'd been too scared to use. Marlene Harper, divorce and asset protection. She answered like she'd been expecting me. I kept it tight. Affair evidence, joint accounts secured, safety concern, docking tomorrow. "Good," she said when I confirmed the accounts were in my name too. "Do not sign anything on this ship. Keep documentation. When you dock, you leave with a written plan. If he threatens you, report it immediately." After I hung up, Tanya sat beside me. "How you feel?" she asked. I listened to the ship, distant laughter, the steady, mechanical hum of motion. "Like I'm finally awake," I said. A knock hit the door, firm, controlled. I looked through the peephole. Rodney. He stood there alone, hands in his pockets, like a patient husband waiting outside a salon. Then he leaned closer and spoke softly, knowing I could hear. "Denise, open up," he said. "We need to fix this before you embarrass yourself more." I didn't answer. Another knock, harder. A pause. Then his voice dropped, sharper. "Don't make me involve the staff." Tanya mouthed. "Call security." I did, calmly. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived. Rodney's posture changed as soon as he saw them. The mask snapped on. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "my wife is emotional. She's locked me out." One officer didn't blink. "Sir, your access is limited pending review. Step away from the door." Rodney's smile strained. "This is absurd." "It's policy," the officer replied. I opened the door a few inches, chain latched, and met Rodney's eyes through the crack. "No," I said quietly. "This is consequences." They guided him down the corridor. Rodney didn't fight. He let the hallway watch him being escorted like a man who'd lost his privileges. When the officers left, Tanya exhaled like she'd been holding air for hours. "He's running out of moves," she whispered. "And that," I said, "is when he gets dangerous." While Tanya made tea with the tiny kettle, I stared at the folder and realized something colder than anger. The affair wasn't the first betrayal, just the loudest. Rodney had been rewriting me for years in smaller ways, correcting my memories in front of friends, joking about my forgetfulness, insisting I hadn't heard what I heard. Gaslighting is a slow theft. You don't notice the missing pieces until you try to build your life and the instructions don't match the parts. My phone chimed with a message request. Sierra Lane. He says you're unstable. Don't make this messy. Let him go. I didn't reply. I screenshot it, saved it, and placed the phone face down. If she wanted me reactive, she'd have to do better than a cheap script. I wasn't competing for a man who needed 2 lives to feel important. Tanya glanced at the screen and muttered, "They always think the wife is the obstacle, not the lie." I nodded once. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't about love triangles. It was about control. Who got to define reality, and who was expected to swallow it in silence. Back in the corridor near the dining room, Rodney stepped out alone, tuxedo slightly rumpled, face bright with controlled fury. Sierra was nowhere behind him now, either dismissed or sent to wait. Rodney's smile snapped on too fast. "There you are," he said. "We need to talk." "I'm not talking without my lawyer," I said. He scoffed softly. "This is a marriage, not a courtroom." "It's both," I replied. Rodney stepped closer. The hallway felt narrower. "You think you're in control because you froze a card?" he whispered. "That's temporary." "And you think you're in control because you've lied for years," I said. "That's temporary too." His eyes hardened. "You don't want this to get ugly." "It already is," I said. "You just wanted me to be the ugly part." He leaned in, voice dropping to something colder. "You're on a ship," he whispered. "You can't go anywhere." I let the silence stretch, letting him hear himself. Then I said, "Neither can you." Behind him, a security officer appeared at the end of the corridor. Quiet presence, quiet warning. Rodney noticed and straightened, pulling the mask back over his face. "Fine," he said louder. "Enjoy your little drama." He walked away, but his shoulders were rigid, holding something inside. Tanya and I returned to my cabin. I locked the door and set the new keycard on the dresser like a badge of citizenship. Then the cabin phone rang. "Mrs. Carter?" Guest services said. "We have a letter for you at the desk, marked urgent." At the desk, I opened the envelope. Plain paper, no return address. "Denise, meet me tonight at 11:30 on the aft deck. Alone. We can fix this. R." Tanya's eyes narrowed. "Alone? Absolutely not." I photographed the letter and sent it to Jamal. He called immediately. "Do not meet him alone," he said. "If you go at all, you go with security nearby, and you keep recording." At 11:25, Tanya and I went to the security desk and showed them the letter. I didn't ask for a confrontation. I asked for a record. An escort at a distance. The aft deck was nearly empty, lit in pale pools. Wind tugged at my coat. The ocean spread out like a dark, breathing animal. Rodney stood at the rail, sleeves rolled up, trying to look like a man who deserved sympathy. When he saw Tanya in the shadow of security, his face hardened. "I said alone." "You don't get to demand that anymore," I replied. He forced softness into his voice. "Denise, I made mistakes, but we have a family, a legacy." "Our daughter is a person, not a legacy," I said. "And you didn't make a mistake. You made a pattern." His eyes flashed. "I gave you everything." "No," I said. "I built with you. You took while you built." Rodney stepped forward, then stopped when the officer shifted slightly. His anger had to share space with consequences now. "You froze my accounts," he said. "You think you can just do that and walk away clean?" "I'm walking away honest," I replied. Rodney laughed once, sharp. "Honest? You've been lying too." "About what?" I asked. His smile returned, small, cruel. "About who you are without me," he said. "Who cares about Denise Carter without Rodney Carter?" Years ago, that would have landed like a knife. Tonight, it landed like proof. I stepped one pace closer and spoke quietly. "Rodney, The only thing you ever gave me was practice." His smile faltered. The officer cleared his throat. "Sir, you need to return to your cabin." Rodney stared at me, and for the first time I saw fear. Not of me, but of being watched as just a man. He lifted his hands in mock surrender. "Fine," he said. Then, as he passed, he leaned close and whispered, "You'll regret this." He walked away under escort, his control shrinking with every step. I stayed at the rail a moment, staring at the waves. Tanya stood beside me. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm clear," I said, because the truth was finally simple. My husband cheated and had an affair, yes. But the deeper betrayal was the way he tried to turn my reality into his performance and expected my silence to keep it alive. Back in the cabin, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "You can't stop what's coming." I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and typed a note. 11:57 p.m. Unknown message. Saved. Fear wasn't fuel anymore. Documentation was. Tomorrow we dock. Tomorrow papers become real. Tomorrow the ocean stops being a cage and becomes a witness. And Rodney Carter will learn that the thing he underestimated most was not my anger. It was my patience. We docked at sunrise. That moment, when the ship stops moving and the gangway locks into place, felt like the world exhaling. The ocean went from a cage to a backdrop, and the vacation-y solution collapsed into something simpler. Choices. Rodney was already awake when I stepped into the corridor with my suitcase. He stood near the elevator in yesterday's clothes, jaw tight, eyes bloodshot with the kind of sleeplessness that isn't about regret. It's about recalculating. Sierra wasn't with him. Either he'd sent her away or she'd finally understood what men like him always do: promise futures they can't afford. He watched me approach like he expected me to flinch. I didn't. Tanya walked beside me, steady as a wall. My phone was in my hand, screen dark but ready. Jamal had told me to keep everything clean now. No shouting, no messy sentences. Let the facts do the yelling. Rodney stepped forward. "Denise," he said, voice controlled. "We can handle this privately." "I'm handling it correctly," I replied. He tried the old switch, softness first. "Think about Brianna." "I am," I said. "That's why I'm not teaching her to stay quiet for a man's comfort." His expression twitched, anger trying to break through the mask. "You're making me look like a villain." I held his gaze. "You made yourself one. I just stopped covering the mirrors." The elevator opened with a chime, and people flowed in around us, dragging suitcases, laughing, talking about flights and breakfasts, unaware they were walking through the aftermath of my marriage. Rodney's shoulders stiffened as witnesses crowded the air. He hated witnesses. They ruined his stories. At the port exit, ship security stood near the doors, calm and visible. One of them nodded at me, like we shared an understanding. That small gesture, being believed, hit me harder than any insult Rodney ever threw. Outside, the air smelled like fuel and salt and morning bread from a nearby kiosk. Real life, not curated, not staged. Tanya and I got into a rideshare and drove straight to Marlene Harper's office. The attorney Jamal had looped in before we even stepped off the ship. The building was plain, glass, and concrete, but the waiting room felt like safety. Quiet, clean, no chandeliers to hide under. Marlene didn't waste time. She slid papers across the table, highlighted lines, and spoken facts. Temporary separation, immediate financial boundaries, a formal request for disclosure, protection orders if threats escalated. She looked at me once and said, "You did the hardest part already. You stopped negotiating with a fantasy." Rodney tried calling twice while we were in the meeting. I didn't answer. Tanya watched the phone light up and said, "He's panicking." "I know," I whispered. "Let him." When we left the office, my hands were still steady. That surprised me. I'd expected to feel shattered. Instead, I felt unburdened, like I'd been carrying a heavy coat in summer and finally set it down. That afternoon, I called Brianna. She answered on the second ring, breathless. "Mom? Where are you?" Dad said, "Baby," I said gently, "I'm safe. Tanya's with me." A A pause. Is something wrong? I chose truth without poison. Your father made choices that broke our marriage, I said. He's been unfaithful, and he's been dishonest. Silence. Then a shaky inhale. So, it's real? Yes, I said. And you don't have to fix it. You don't have to pick sides. You just have to be honest about how you feel. Her voice cracked. I hate him. I know, I said softly. And you're allowed to feel that. But don't let hate build a home in you, okay? Let it pass through. We'll get you help. We'll get through this. She cried, and I didn't tell her to stop. I didn't rush her. I stayed on the line until her breathing slowed, until her voice steadied, until she whispered, I love you, Mom. I love you more, I said. And I'm proud of you. That night, alone in my apartment, temporary, small, quiet, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at my own face the way I used to look at Rodney's, searching for clues. There was fatigue there, and grief, but there was also something I hadn't seen in years. Presence. Rodney texted once, late. You ruined everything. I stared at the message for a long minute, then typed back a sentence I didn't know I had in me until I wrote it. No, you revealed everything. Then I blocked the number. The quiet after that wasn't lonely. It was clean. Weeks later, when people asked what happened, I didn't give them a performance. I gave them a truth. My husband cheated and had an affair. He tried to control the story. He tried to make me the unstable one. And then I learned the strongest thing a woman can do isn't scream. It's prepare. It's document. It's refuse to argue with someone committed to misunderstanding you. And it's walk away with your dignity intact. Because here's the lesson the ocean tried to teach me before I ever stepped on that ship. Control is an illusion when it's built on lies. It works only as long as you agree to play your role. I stopped agreeing, and when I did, the whole set fell down. If you made it to the end of this story, tell me in the comments, what would you do if you discovered the truth on a trip meant to celebrate love? And if you enjoy these cold, twisty, real-life feeling stories, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Hit like to help the channel grow, and share this with someone who needs a reminder. You're not too sensitive. You're just finally paying attention.